This is Dan, and this is the Napkin Academy. This lesson is the Blah-Blahmeter Advanced Lessons. You might remember that in a previous lesson we spent a fair amount of time going over the Blah-Blahmeter in detail. This is an elective lesson if you'd like to know even more about how to use this powerful tool. Very simple idea. We can use the Blah-Blahmeter to know when and how to be vivid. What I mean, of course, is that this tool can be very effective for helping us understand why we might want to be more visual and more vivid in clarifying ideas, especially those that are not becoming as clear as we'd like. When I talk about the Blah-Blahmeter, really, what are we talking about? Here's the idea. When we are listening to a group of people or an individual talking, and it seems that there's an idea emerging from that group, but we're uncertain about how clear it really is. Are we really understanding it or not? What the Blah-Blahmeter does is it serves as a kind of a conceptual tool, a kind of an audio filter. We put on our headphones virtually, we attach them to the Blah-Blahmeter, we aim our microphone, our conceptual microphone, at the person or people who are talking, and then we see where the Blah-Blahmeter ranks on its scale. Is something clear or is something not clear? The less clear it is, the more blah blah we're going to see, and the more we're going to get jumping on our Blah-Blahmeter wheel. That's what we're talking about. What are they talking about? These are the examples that we used in the previous lesson to explore the Blah-Blahmeter, and we're going to continue to talk about them. The examples again, quick review. 4 public figures with 4 different messages that were delivered verbally. One from Captain Sullenberger as he was flying his plane and saving his crew. One from President Obama as he was trying to explain healthcare reform in the United States. One message from the Coca-Cola company that was trying to explain the benefits of their new lovely water product, and one message from Bernie Madoff as he was trying to explain why you might want to invest in his company. And as you might recall, each one of them had a different message, and what we did is we read each message and we tried to decide whether we really understood it, whether we sort of understood it, or whether we didn't understand it at all. And across this spectrum, what we came up with was this kind of ranking from Captain Sullenberger over to Bernie Madoff. Now what you could do is we could imagine that we could rank the order of clarity into sort of 4 different categories, from most understood to least understood. This is the basis of the Blah-Blahmeter. What I mean is we can then take those rankings and map them out across these 4 quadrants and use this as a basis of a tool that will help us understand how any verbally delivered message maps out similarly. This is what I call the basics of the Blah-Blahmeter. The Blah-Blahmeter, of course, tells us, well, when Captain Sullenberger spoke, there was no blah. When President Obama spoke, there was some blah. When the Coca-Cola company spoke, there was some blah blah, and when Bernie Madoff spoke, there was a lot of meaningless words in what he had to say. Now, as we begin to map these out, we start to fill in the Blah-Blahmeter. Now, this is why this is the advanced Blah-Blahmeter lesson, because in this lesson, we're going to go through each cell, step by step, filling them in, understanding what is the value of that exercise. Let's begin by just looking at the 4 rankings. In no blah, the message is clear. In 1 blah, the message is boring. In 2 blahs, the message is foggy. We say, I'm not sure I understood that. And in 3 blahs, the message is downright misleading, meaning the message is being delivered so that we'll look in a direction opposite to what the idea is really about. As we go to the next level then, we say, if that's what the message is, what can we discern about the original idea? Well, if the message is very, very clear, we can guarantee that the message, at minimum, was very simple. Doesn't mean it was right, but it means it was simple, therefore it was clear. If the idea was boring, we can generally discern that a large part of that is because the idea was delivered in a way which was very complicated. It made it seem difficult for our mind to follow along, and therefore at some point we stopped, which is largely the definition of something being boring. In the blah blah level, the idea became foggy for the simple reason that the idea itself was missing. There was actually no central idea. The reason why there were so many words was to try to make it appear that there was substance where there actually was none. And lastly, when we get to blah cubed, triple blah blah blah, why is the message so misleading is because the owner of the message, the person speaking it, knows that their own message is fundamentally rotten. And if we actually understood exactly what they were talking about, we would not listen. So what has to happen is we must be misled so that we look over in the wrong direction, not to notice that the underlying idea is actually rotten. Based on what we've seen about the idea, we can begin to try to discern some level of intent of the original speaker. Now the fact is, it is always a real challenge. It is difficult to try to discern what is the intent of someone else's meaning. But what we can begin to understand by using the Blah-Blahmeter is we can begin to get an idea of what this person likely meant as it regards us through their message. So for example, if someone had a simple message delivered clearly, we can be sure that the idea was to help us clarify what it was that was in their mind. If the idea was complicated and therefore became boring, we can't be entirely sure, but we can begin to guess that the original intent was probably to illuminate, but the idea went wrong because of its over-complexity. If the idea is foggy, because there is no central idea there, we can be pretty certain that the intent was actually to obfuscate, to obscure the fact that there was no really good idea, and that's why things are becoming foggy. And often, if we know that there is a rotten idea, or we detect that there's a rotten idea, because we can sense that we're being misled, often that will tell us that the intent was actually to divert us, to make us not look at what was being really said, but to look at something else. Now, of course, the whole idea here of the Blah-Blahmeter is that we move from left to right. Messages are becoming increasingly less clear, and it becomes increasingly more important for us to make them more vivid. Why? Because a clear, simple message intended to clarify, one that we understand, is one that we can analyze in great depth and know what to do. A boring idea, reflecting something that's complicated although intended to illuminate, tells us that we need to start to go in to make it less complicated so it becomes less boring, so that we can become truly illuminated by the idea. An idea which is foggy, though, is one that's telling us we better find a way to go in there and move those clouds out of the way so that we can see what the core of the idea was and make sure there is a good core of an idea. And if we're being diverted, it is critical that we detect that that's because there's a rotten message and detect how we're being misled so that we no longer are being misled. And this is where the vivid thinking tools will come into play. If an idea is already very clear, delivered simply with the intent to clarify, what vivid thinking can do, that means to say, taking the words and adding complementary imagery to make the idea vivid, the idea will become super crystalline. If, however, the idea was boring because it was complicated, although intended to illuminate, what vivid will do is help us unclutter that original idea and sharpen it and bring it into focus so that it moves into this quadrant as well. Now, if an idea was intended to obfuscate or obscure, what vivid will do is allow us to discover and develop the missing essence of that idea to determine, well, what was it really about, so that we can then move it over into this quadrant. And lastly, if the idea was rotten, what vivid thinking will allow us to do is parse through the idea in enough detail that we will be able to debunk and dispel the rottenness, move away from what is misleading, detect again what is really the underlying aspect of this idea so that we can move that over into the no blah quadrant. Let's repeat that one more time. Why are we spending so much time looking at this Blah-Blahmeter? Because the underlying premise of everything about vivid thinking is this. We want to take every idea that we have, no matter how unclear, and move them into the no blah quadrant. This is our ultimate goal. We want to make sure that every idea that's out there, no matter how it originates in clarity, ultimately becomes a no blah blah idea, so that the idea is clear. The idea can be expressed in a simple way so that it can very rapidly help to clarify what it's about, and we can then make that idea exceptionally crystalline and really understand what it's about, which means now we will truly get it. The tools that we're going to use to make sure that we move from an idea which is unclear to an idea which is very clear are going to be two. The vivid grammar graph, which we're going to explore in the very next lesson. We're going to introduce it and begin to make our way through it. And again, the vivid forest, tool number 2, the idea that's going to represent the bulk of our lessons as we move towards the last third of our training. The form, only essentials, recognizable, evolving, spans differences, targeted idea. These are the tools that we're going to use to convert our ideas across the Blah-Blahmeter to make sure that everything goes into category 1, clear and vivid. Let's wrap this up with a great example, and this was one that was actually submitted by one of our associates right from the Napkin Academy. I'll introduce who in a moment. This is what I'm going to call usability alphabet soup. The idea of this is that there are lots and lots of very smart people out there who over the last 15 or 20 years have come to recognize that one of the greatest aspects of creating an interactive product or even a physical product is the idea of that product's usability. How easy is it to use that? How easy is it to use a website? How easy is it to use a teapot? And if, for example, something is incredibly complicated, let's say we had a teapot that looked like this. It had multiple spouts and it had multiple handles and it had multiple lids coming off of different sides, and someone was to look at that and say, what? It is the job of the usability expert to take a look at that product and to take a look at that user and say, how could we simplify and clarify that to make sure that it has a usability which is very high? Now, there are lots of different types of professions of people that have become involved in usability over the years, and there are many, many different organizations that represent them. Here are just some of the organizations that have come up over the last several years to support the needs of these various usability experts. The Usability Professionals Association, Human-Computer Interaction Association, the Service Design Network, Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, the Society for Technical Communication, IXDA, AIGA, SIG-Chi, ASISNT. It really is alphabet soup in a way. Each one of these organizations does have specific areas in which it focuses. Some of them look at usability from this perspective. Some of them look at usability from that perspective. Some are interested quite literally in product design. Some of them are interested in interaction design. But the fact is, each one of these groups has its own set of members and orients itself to focus on the needs of various types of members. However, there is tremendous confusion as well between all of them because it's very unclear what is the difference between what each one of them really does. Recently, the president of this organization, along with many members of his community, made a decision that it was time to change their name in order to help try to clarify the position of this organization within this alphabet soup world of usability. Now, the way that this gentleman decided to do it was by writing an email that explained what had happened. This was the email that was intended to clarify why it is that the Usability Professionals Association is changing its name. Look at this. I've had the opportunity over the last 24 hours to listen to the community as it digests in Las Vegas or around the world. The meaning of our announcement, if you don't know what I'm talking about, yesterday at the conference, the Usability Professionals Treasurer announced that the UPA is no longer. What? No longer? What do you mean? Oh, because we have started a new organization, the UXPA. Aha, something has shifted, or User Experience Professionals Association. And the gentleman goes on to talk, as you can see, at some length about why this decision was made, this momentous decision to move from a title of UPA to UXPA, with lots of verbs thrown in and lots of acronyms thrown in from the other organizations. The issue is this: how effective from a true usability perspective is this note? It takes too long, it demands too much of me to try to understand why this decision has been made. And so, thank you, Shiv in Hyderabad. Shiv, awesome associate from the Napkin Academy, always sending in his homework. Thank you, Shiv. Shiv is a member of the UPA, and he said, Dan, I got this mail. I found it full of blah, blah, blah. I'm concerned. I think it could have been more readily explained by making it vivid. And here's the picture that Shivanand drew. If this is today, the UPA, the Usability Professionals Association, represents the needs of usability professionals. By changing the name to the UXPA, tomorrow, the association will represent the needs of a broader group, including information architects, interaction designers, visual designers, and the usability professionals. Hence the need to change the name. Now the question I ask is, isn't this a more vivid way of describing what was in that note? I think so. Shiv, thank you for your wonderful contribution. Homework. If you've listened in on this advanced lesson on the Blah-Blahmeter, I would like you to begin to practice a little bit how to use it. Same homework we've had before. Try it one more time. Please go out and find a couple, let's just say one. Go find one prominent quote from something you're interested in. See if you can read how clear it is. Locate that quotation on the Blah-Blahmeter and see if you can deduce not just the meaning, but what do you think was the intent. Hey, thank you all for another great lesson. This is Dan signing off from the Napkin Academy, but don't go away. Now on our new platform, you can still submit your homework. Debbie, our community manager, is going to join you right now to show you exactly how to do that, and I really encourage you, do your homework. Okay, take it away, Debbie. See you soon.
We hope you enjoyed this Napkin Academy classic video. We've made it easier than ever to share your homework. After you've completed your homework and have a JPEG or PNG file saved on your computer, come back to this course. Once you're back here, scroll to the bottom of the screen, and in the comments box, you can add a comment. I'm just going to call this one My Homework. You can also add images by clicking on the Insert Edit Image button here. In the source box, click on the file. In the Images window, click on Upload, and then click on Add Files. This is going to take you to your computer where you can search for your images. I'm just going to search for mine in Pictures, and I'm going to choose this image here. You can also add multiple images here. Click Upload. After the upload is complete, click Close. Then scroll down, and you'll see that the last image is here, and it's checked. This is the one we just uploaded. Click Insert. I suggest in the Dimensions box you change the maximum to 1200 pixels and leave the Constrained Proportions box checked. You can also add an image description here if you'd like. Click OK. You'll see that your image has been added to your comment. And now the last step, the most important one, make sure that you click the green comment button here to upload your homework to the Napkin Academy. We hope to see your homework soon.